I never thought I'd be the kind of man who second-guesses his own sanity. But when it's your wife doing the questioning, it starts to wear you down. It started small, like all the worst things do. A misplaced lunch date. A forgotten errand. A phone conversation I supposedly agreed to but couldn't recall. Brenda would sigh and smile, tilting her head just slightly, her voice soft like honey. "It's okay, babe. Your memory just isn't what it used to be." At first, I laughed it off. I'm 44, not 84. I've never had memory issues in my life. But sure, I can forget a thing here or there. Still, her reminders came more frequently. "Remember when we went to that Italian place on Tuesday?" she'd ask. I'd stare at her blankly. "Tuesday? I was at a client dinner." She insisted otherwise. "You said the tiramisu was life-changing." I stared at her like she'd grown a second head. But what are you supposed to do when someone you love looks you in the eyes and insists something happened, something you're sure didn't? You start to question yourself. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I did forget. Maybe I'm just stressed. We live in a quiet, gated neighborhood on the Gulf side of Florida, a little slice of peace with palm trees and bird feeders and lawn service every Wednesday. I work from home 3 days a week doing financial consulting, which means I have time to hit the golf course on Friday mornings with the neighborhood league. Brenda teaches yoga at a boutique gym nearby, and on weekends, she volunteers at an animal rescue. She's beloved in the community. Sweet, calm, always smiling. People call her Zen Brenda. But Brenda at home, well, she'd changed. Lately, she barely looked up from her phone. She stopped making jokes during dinner. If I asked how her day was, I'd get one-word answers. But bring up some lunch I supposedly forgot about or a conversation we never had. Suddenly, she was full of energy. "Don't you remember, Nick? You promised you'd pick up wine on the way home yesterday." "I haven't left the house in 2 days, Brenda." She'd just smile again, soft and patronizing. "I'm worried about you." After enough of those moments, I was worried about me too. Then came the night she said we had dinner plans with Ron from Pilates. I told her I had no clue who that was. She laughed. "You met him last month, remember? He complimented your shoes." I looked down at my feet, confused. I hadn't bought new shoes in years. That's when I started writing things down. Quietly, I bought a small Moleskine notebook and started logging my days. Just bullet points, nothing fancy. Where I went, what I ate, who I spoke to. I even logged the times I took out the trash or watered the lawn. I started to feel like I was building my own alibi. For what? I wasn't sure yet. It was around that time Brenda began hinting at medical concerns. "You've seemed foggy lately," she'd say. "You might want to get checked. Early onset dementia's no joke, babe." That hit me hard. My grandfather had Alzheimer's. Watching him fade away piece by piece scarred my whole family. The idea that I might be following that path. Well, I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie awake wondering if Brenda was right. Maybe I was forgetting things. Maybe something was wrong with me. Until I found the keycard. That Saturday morning started like any other. I was heading out to meet the guys at the course, except it had rained the night before and the course was soggy. I decided to stay home and reorganize my gear instead. I pulled out my golf bag from the closet to clean out the pockets. There, tucked in with my spare gloves and tees, was a plastic hotel keycard. A white Marriott card, plain with just the red logo. I blinked at it. We hadn't stayed in a hotel since our anniversary in April, and that was a little coastal inn, not a Marriott. My first instinct was to assume it had been in there for a while, maybe from a past trip. But the weird thing? The card looked clean. No scratches. No dust. It looked new. And why the hell was it in my bag? I showed it to Brenda later that day, holding it up casually like I was curious. "Did we go to a Marriott recently?" I asked. She barely looked at it. "No. Probably something you forgot from a conference or something." "I haven't been to a conference in months." She shrugged, going back to her phone. "Maybe you picked it up on accident." I stood there staring at her, something cold and sharp curling in my gut. That night, I checked my Moleskine. I hadn't gone anywhere that would explain a Marriott keycard. I was home all week. The only person in this house who could have used my golf bag was Brenda. Sunday, I said I was going to swing by the course. I left early. Brenda was in the kitchen in her robe, sipping tea and scrolling her phone like always. I pulled into the clubhouse parking lot and parked in the back. Then I called the front desk and rescheduled my tea time. The guy didn't mind, said the back 9 was too wet anyway. Instead, I drove to Brenda's yoga studio and parked across the street. Her class ended at 10:30. She walked out at 10:40, wearing jeans and a flowy tank top, hair freshly done, not sweaty, not winded like she usually was. She didn't see me. I followed her. Not for long, just a few blocks down to the Marriott by the highway. She pulled into the lot, parked near the back, and walked straight in through the side entrance like she'd done it 100 times. I didn't follow her in. I didn't need to. My wife had just lied to me about teaching a class. She was walking into a hotel, and something told me it wasn't for the continental breakfast. It wasn't about the hotel card anymore. It was about everything. The lunches I never went to. The conversations I didn't remember. The things she claimed I said and did. She wasn't worried about my memory. She was rewriting it. You ever get the feeling you're the only one awake in a room full of sleepwalkers? That's what it felt like the next morning, watching Brenda hum to herself while flipping pancakes in our kitchen. She wore her soft blue robe, the one I bought her 2 birthdays ago, and her hair was tied up like she hadn't just walked into a Marriott the day before to meet God knows who. "Morning, babe," she said cheerily, flipping a pancake. "Want banana or blueberry?" I watched her for a second, wondering how long she'd been playing this role. How many mornings she'd stood there acting like she was still my wife. Still mine. "Blueberry's fine," I said, and forced a smile. She kissed my cheek and went back to the stove like everything was normal. I'd been so caught up in trying to figure out if I was losing my mind. It hadn't occurred to me that maybe she was the one rewriting reality. That's what gaslighting is, right? A slow drip of doubt. Death by 1,000 contradictions. I'd been journaling for weeks. Bullet points mostly, boring stuff like, took out trash 7 a.m. Brenda said lunch at bistro, not true. No conversation on concert tickets, yet she insists I agreed. It was meant to keep me sane. But now it was evidence. I added a new entry that morning. Sunday. Brenda exits yoga studio wearing casual clothes. Not sweaty. Drove to Marriott off Cypress Boulevard, entered via side entrance, alone. Stayed 2 hours. I didn't follow her inside. Didn't need to. I had enough. But I wanted more. 2 days later, she mentioned him. As if it were casual. Ron from Pilates said he might stop by the class Saturday, she said over dinner. He's funny. He told me I remind him of his ex-wife, but in a good way. I didn't even look up from my plate. "Oh yeah? You guys talk a lot." She shrugged. "He's in the class. We stretch. We chat. It's Pilates, not the CIA." But I'd never heard of Ron before. Not in the whole 2 years she'd been teaching there. And now he had a name. A job. A backstory. A harmless friendship. A cover. That Saturday, I switched things up. Told her I had a golf scramble tournament. Which was true, technically. I just didn't go. Instead, I drove her car out of the neighborhood just after she left for Pilates. Then I circled back and parked down the block in my truck. And I waited. At 9:15, she came out, dressed in yoga pants and a pink tank top. Not sweaty. Hair perfect. Makeup on. Not a trace of exercise. She got in her car and headed east. I followed again, keeping back. She didn't go to the studio. She went back to the Marriott. Same entrance. Same routine. Except this time, 20 minutes later, he showed up. Tall guy, mid-50s, short gray hair. Fit, confident. I recognized him from the gym newsletter pinned to our fridge. Instructor of the month, Ron. He walked in with a duffel bag, like he'd done it 100 times. Ron from Pilates. I felt something boil in my chest, but I didn't move. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. Instead, I drove home, poured myself a drink, and sat on the back porch. And I planned. That night, I brought up my memory issues. Told Brenda I'd been feeling foggy lately. Said I was worried. She set her fork down slowly, watching me. I said, you've been saying I forget things a lot. And I've noticed it too. I've been losing track of time, appointments. Just blank spaces. She nodded sympathetically, almost too quickly. I've noticed it, yeah. You think I should see someone? She hesitated. Maybe. Just for peace of mind. I rubbed my hands together like I was anxious. Would it help if we documented stuff? Like a shared journal? So I can see what I miss. You know, just until I get tested. She tilted her head. That's actually a really good idea. 2 weeks later, we had a shared Google Doc called Nick's Memory Log. Her idea, or so she believed. She'd update it daily with things like, Tuesday, lunch at Whole Foods, discussed Ron's dog, you laughed. Friday, you forgot to call the plumber. I reminded you twice. Sunday, I taught 2 Pilates classes. Got home at 1. You were napping. Thing is, I wasn't napping Sunday. I followed her again. She went to the Marriott. And now? She just logged a lie. Perfect. By week 5, the document was packed with inconsistencies. Whole days she said we spent together where I had receipts proving I was at work. Lunches she said we had at places I've never been. Conversations she claimed I agreed to, like fixing the guest room sink. That never happened. She thought she was helping me, reinforcing her lie, building her narrative. But all she was doing was writing her confession, one time-stamped lie at a time. Then came the journal entry that broke me. Thursday, I went to yoga at 9 a.m., met with Ron after to discuss a potential joint class idea. We had smoothies. You were home watching that war movie you like. Problem? Thursday, I had a meeting with my CPA across town. I didn't get home until 5. She knew that, but she logged that I was home, watching a movie. Convenient, if you're building an alibi. I waited another month. I let her pile up the lies, the misdirection, the emotional manipulation. I let her take care of me like a patient, bringing me vitamins and talking softly, like I was slipping. And I smiled the whole time. Because I wasn't slipping. I was setting the trap. I chose her father's birthday dinner. Brenda's parents had money, old Florida money. Her dad, Frank, owned half the rental properties in our county. Stiff, proud, and traditional. He never liked me much, but he respected me. Especially after he added that little clause in his will. The one Brenda didn't know about. The one that said I'd inherit his Siesta Key guest house if our marriage ever dissolved due to unfaithfulness or abandonment. Funny how lawyers phrase things. Dinner was at their estate. Candles, linen napkins, and Frank's favorite jazz on the Sonos. Brenda wore her best dress and poured wine like everything was perfect. Midway through dessert, I pulled out my phone. Hey, before we go, I said casually, I wanted to share something. I've been journaling. Brenda tensed. Her mother smiled politely. Oh, I nodded. It's helped me cope with the memory stuff. Brenda's been so supportive. She's actually been keeping a shared log for me. Haven't you, hon? She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. I thought I'd read a few entries, I said, opening the document, just to show how helpful she's been. And I did. I read the entry from Thursday, the smoothie with Ron. Then I pulled out the credit card statement, showing she checked into a Marriott that morning. Her dad frowned. I read another entry, the Sunday she claimed she was teaching all morning. I showed the GPS log from her phone, Marriott again. Her mother looked sick. I read 5 more entries, each one followed by dated evidence. Screenshots, timestamped texts, receipts. Brenda's face went pale. Frank leaned back in his chair, lips pressed tight. Then he turned to her, his voice low and sharp. You've been lying to us. Brenda started to stammer. Dad, it's not what. But he cut her off. We're done here. I moved into the guest house that night. Brenda stayed at her sister's. 2 days later, I got a call from Frank's lawyer. The clause was enacted. The deed was transferred. The house, and the peace that came with it, was now mine. There's a different kind of quiet when you're living alone again. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of someone else's gravity. Their footsteps, their sighs, the way they open the fridge and leave it open just a little too long. I noticed it all, because now it was gone. The guest house on Frank's property wasn't huge. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a small galley kitchen, and a screened-in porch facing the water. It was meant to be a little getaway spot, a place Frank used to come when Brenda's mother got too loud, as he used to put it. Now it was mine, a quiet fortress with a salt breeze, tucked under leaning palms. I slept well for the first time in months. I didn't wake up to Brenda nudging me with some passive-aggressive comment about forgetting to feed the dog. I didn't walk into the kitchen to find her on the phone with someone and then whispering when I entered. I didn't feel that slow-burn paranoia that comes from living beside a person who is lying to your face. Just me, my thoughts, the water, and the journal. I printed it. All of it. 56 pages, double-sided, bound neatly in a red folder labeled Nick's Memory Therapy. I kept it on the nightstand like a souvenir, not of the marriage, but of the moment I realized I wasn't crazy. A record of the gaslight that never quite caught flame. Brenda didn't try to call me for 3 days after the dinner. Then the messages started. Nick, we need to talk. I don't know what you're trying to do, but this is cruel. You humiliated me in front of my parents. Please, can we just meet? Just talk. I didn't answer. Not at first. She showed up at the guest house on the 5th day. I heard the gravel crunch under tires and peeked through the blinds. There she was, parked at the end of the driveway in her white crossover, hands gripping the steering wheel like it had something to say. I let her knock twice before I opened the door. She looked different, less polished, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, a tightness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Can we talk?" she said softly. I stepped aside. "You've got 5 minutes." She came in, scanned the place like she expected it to be dirty, or cold, or lonely. But it wasn't. It was clean, lived in, peaceful. "I don't know what you think you're doing," she began. "But that wasn't fair. What you did at dinner." "What you did," I said, keeping my voice calm, "was lie. To me, to your parents, to yourself." She crossed her arms. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me how it was." She opened her mouth, paused. No words came. "You logged lies into that journal, Brenda. Systematically. Repeatedly. You tried to convince me I was losing my mind." Her eyes flashed. "Because you were." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You wanted me to think I was." "Big difference." Her voice cracked. "I didn't want to hurt you. But you did." We stood there in silence for a long time. Then she glanced at the red folder on the counter. "You printed it." "Every word." She sat down, slowly. "I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think you'd trap me like that." I leaned against the counter. "I didn't trap you. You left breadcrumbs. I just followed them." That was the last real conversation we had. She moved out of her sister's place a week later. Word got around. It always does in small communities. Ron quit the Pilates studio for personal reasons. Brenda stopped showing up to the animal rescue. Her parents stopped speaking to her altogether. I wasn't trying to ruin her life. I just wasn't going to let her keep rewriting mine. Funny thing about betrayal, it doesn't show up all at once. It creeps in through tiny cracks, moments you shrug off. The late return from yoga, the made-up memory, the way someone suddenly flinches when you ask them what's wrong. And when it breaks, it doesn't make a sound. Just silence. I started building routines again. Mornings on the porch with coffee and the local paper. Afternoon bike rides through the mangroves. Golf on Fridays. Actual golf, not surveillance missions. I even made new friends. There was this guy, Charles, in the unit down the road. Retired Navy, big fan of gin rummy and grilling steak. We'd sit out back with drinks, talking about nothing and everything. "Women will drive you mad," he said once, flipping a burger. "But a good woman? She steadies your ship. A bad one? She pokes holes in it." I nodded. I spent a year thinking I was sinking because of me. Turns out she was drilling from below. He just smiled. "You're afloat now. That's what matters." About a month after the dinner, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the cursive immediately. "Brenda. Nick. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know what I'm asking for. Maybe just to be heard. Maybe just for you to know I'm not okay. You were the best man I've ever known. And I broke you. I see that now. I didn't start out trying to lie. But once I did, it snowballed. I got lost in it. Ron was a mistake. You were real. I'm sorry. B. I read it once. Folded it. Put it in the drawer with the rest. Did I feel better? A little. But forgiveness isn't a faucet. You can't turn it on with words. I went to church again, for the first time in years. Not for any particular sermon. I just missed the stillness. After service, the pastor asked if I wanted to talk. "Going through a divorce," I said. He nodded. "Do you want her back?" I thought about it. The lies. The side glances. The keycard. "No," I said. "I want me back." One afternoon, while sorting some of Brenda's old mail that still arrived, I found a card from her mother, unopened. I debated tossing it. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short note. "Brenda, I don't know how you let things get so far. Your father is heartbroken. We both are. But if you want to find your way back, you need to start by being honest with yourself. Love, Mom." Some nights, I still think about how easily it all could have gone differently. If I hadn't found that keycard. If I'd believed her lies. If I'd gone to the doctor and let someone tell me I was slipping. But then I remember that silence. That clear, still, guiltless silence of the guest house. And I know I made it out. Frank's birthday fell on a Thursday that year. Mid-September in Florida still feels like summer, the heat clinging to your clothes even after the sun sets. I wasn't sure I'd be invited, but the card came in the mail like clockwork. Simple white envelope. Blue ink. Handwritten. Asterisk Nick. "We'd like you at the house this year. Please come. Diane." Asterisk. That was Brenda's mother. No mention of Brenda. No mention of what happened at last year's dinner when I read the journal aloud and let the truth unravel right there between the champagne flutes and birthday candles. I hadn't spoken to Frank since. But I'd heard he was keeping quiet around the country club. Word spreads fast in gated communities, even if nobody says anything directly. Most folks took my side, not out of affection for me, but because of the evidence. No one could argue with the paper trail. No one wanted to. It was one thing to cheat. It was another thing entirely to fake a man's memory loss and use it as cover. That got people's attention. When I pulled up to the main house, Diane was already on the porch waiting. She was dressed in pale green, her hair up the way it always was for formal dinners. Her eyes crinkled into a sad smile when she saw me. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wasn't sure I should." "You should," she said plainly, stepping forward to hug me. She held on a beat longer than expected. Inside, it looked the same as it always had: polished hardwood floors, heavy antique furniture, the faint smell of citrus cleaner, and old leather. The house was a little too big for two people, but Frank liked space, and Diane liked not having to compromise. Dinner was set for 8. There were only 6 of us at the table: Frank and Diane, Brenda's cousin Tom and his wife, me, and an empty seat that I suspected had been meant for Brenda. I didn't ask. Frank looked older, thinner around the face, but his voice still carried weight. He raised his glass halfway through the meal. "To time," he said, "the most precious thing we have, and the only thing we can't buy back." We all drank. Then he added, without looking at anyone in particular, "and to truth, however late it arrives." That was the only reference to what had happened, but it was enough. After dinner, Frank asked me to walk with him down by the dock. The moon was out, low and yellow, hanging over the mangroves like a spotlight. We walked slowly, neither of us talking for the first minute or two. Then he said, "You know, Brenda wrote me a letter." I figured. "She said you manipulated her into keeping that journal." I laughed once, short and dry. "She's not used to someone keeping the receipts." Frank nodded slowly. "She was always good at rewriting stories. Even as a girl. Told her 3rd-grade teacher I'd forgotten to pick her up once. Claimed I left her stranded in the rain. Truth was, she never told us there was early dismissal." "She's good at making you question yourself," I said. "She gets that from her mother." We stood near the edge of the dock. The water slapped softly against the pilings. "I want to give you something," he said. "You already have. The guest house." "No," he interrupted, turning to face me. "I want to make it official." I blinked. "It already is." He shook his head. "That clause in the will, it was only conditional. You live there, sure. But ownership was pending until after I passed, unless otherwise amended." "Okay." He pulled out an envelope, handed it to me. Inside was a notarized amendment, a full transfer, deed and title, effective immediately. "Frank, you earned it," he said. "You protected yourself without raising your voice. You gave her the dignity to fall apart on her own. I wasn't trying to win. You didn't have to," he said. "You just told the truth. That's rare, son." He put a hand on my shoulder. "I want someone living on this land who respects what's real." When I got back to the guest house, I placed the deed beside the red folder. Both quiet things, both powerful in their own way. I didn't sleep right away. I sat on the porch, a beer in my hand, listening to the wind move through the trees. I wondered if Brenda knew about the amendment. I figured she would soon. She showed up 2 days later. Not at the guest house. At the main house. She parked crooked on the driveway and left the door to her car open, engine still running. I was sitting on the back porch, reading, when I heard Diane raise her voice for the first time in 20 years. "You need to leave, Brenda. Mama, please. You need to leave." Then I heard the front door slam. She walked around the side of the house, tears streaking down her cheeks, barefoot, mascara running. She saw me and stopped in her tracks. "You just couldn't let it go," she said bitterly. "You had to take everything." "I didn't take anything," I said, standing. "You gave it away." She walked toward me, fists clenched. "He's leaving me." I tilted my head. "Ron. He moved to Tampa," she spat. "Said I was too much drama." I didn't respond. She stepped closer, like she was searching for the old version of me in my eyes. "Do you remember the first time we came out here? You said this place felt like a sanctuary." "It still does," I said. She swallowed hard. "We could fix it." "No, Brenda. You broke it." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I don't have anywhere to go. That's not my problem anymore." She left without another word. I thought that might be the end of it. But life has a way of spinning one last thread, just when you think the story's over. The next morning, I got a letter in the mail, postmarked 2 weeks earlier, from Frank's lawyer. Inside, a copy of an old codicil, an addendum to his will from 7 years back. In the event of a marriage between Nicholas J. Randall and Brenda Lynn Evans dissolving due to proven infidelity or abandonment, I hereby bequeath the Siesta Key Guest House, its land, and assets to Nicholas J. Randall, with no recourse by Brenda Lynn Evans or her representatives. This is to protect the legacy of this home, as I believe Nicholas upholds the values I hold dear. Dated. Signed. Witnessed. Brenda never knew. I smiled as I slid the paper back into the envelope. Some truths arrive late. Others were waiting the whole time. The thing about betrayal is, it teaches you how much of your life was built on assumptions. Little ones. Daily ones. That the woman making your morning coffee loves you. That the sound of the garage door closing means she's headed to yoga. That your memories, your truth, are shared. But after it all collapses, you realize truth is lonelier than you'd like to admit. And healing? That doesn't happen on a calendar. It happens when you're washing dishes and realize you no longer flinch when your phone buzzes. When you drive past the Marriott and don't have to look twice. When you wake up one morning, make breakfast for no one but yourself, and realize that's enough. I was 2 months into the quiet life when I met her. Not in a dramatic way, no lightning strike, no missed connection. It was the hardware store. I was standing in aisle 7, staring at 2 nearly identical gallons of deck stain, trying to figure out which one matched the old pine on the guest house porch. I must have stood there 10 minutes, arguing with myself, when a voice behind me said, "If you want that sun-dried gray color, go with the oil-based. Water-based always ends up looking too fresh, like new money pretending to be old." I turned. She was wearing a paint-speckled baseball cap, ponytail through the back, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Mid-40s, maybe, with the kind of confidence that says she'd rather tell you the truth than flatter you. "You paint decks for a living?" I asked. She grinned. "Nope. I manage a vacation rental down on Coral Drive. Keeps me handy. Plus, I learned from the old guy who owned it before, Marine Vet. Wouldn't let me hire out for anything. Said, if you can't fix your own railings, you've got no business owning them." I smiled at that. He's got a point. "Name's June," she said, holding out a hand. "Nick." She tilted her head. "You the guy in the guest house on Hibiscus?" "Guilty. My uncle knows Frank. Says you handled yourself with class." I chuckled. That's one way to put it. We stood there for a second, just smiling. I picked the oil-based stain. "Good choice," she said, and walked off like it was nothing. But something about her stayed with me. We ran into each other again a week later at the farmer's market, then again at the library drop box. By the 3rd time, I started to wonder if the universe was nudging me or just showing off. This time, she stopped to talk. "How's the deck looking?" Like someone with trust issues sanded it for therapy. She laughed. "That bad?" I shrugged. "That good." We sat on a nearby bench, sipping lemon water and listening to a street performer fumble through an old John Denver song. "I heard a little about what happened," she said after a while. "Not the gossip, but the journal thing. That's wild." "Yeah," I said, watching a couple kids toss pebbles into the fountain nearby. For a while, I really thought I was losing it. "You weren't." "No," I said, but she needed me to think I was. She was quiet a moment, then said, "I was married once. 5 years. He left when I was diagnosed with breast cancer." My head turned. "God, I'm sorry." "I'm not," she said plainly. "He did me a favor. I got better and learned how to survive on my own." I nodded slowly. "That kind of solitude, it teaches you things." "It does," she said. "But eventually, you want to build again." I glanced at her, and just like that, the wind picked up, rattling the trees. I didn't fall in love with June. Not yet. But I liked that she didn't treat me like damaged goods. She didn't ask too many questions. Didn't offer pity. She spoke plainly, laughed often, and could quote Clint Eastwood movies better than me. We started meeting up at the marina, just to walk and talk. Some days, she'd bring coffee. Other days, I'd bring a folding chair and we'd sit under the same leaning palm and talk about anything but the past. One afternoon, she said, "You ever think about leaving Florida?" I thought about it. "I used to dream about it," I said. "Now? I don't know. This place knows me too well." June smiled. "Places don't know us. We just leave parts of ourselves behind." Brenda emailed me once that month. Subject line, "Please read." I opened it. "Nick, I don't want to undo what's done, but I'm struggling. Everyone's backed away. I lost my job at the studio. Ron cut me off. Mom and Dad, well, I'm not asking for a second chance. Just some compassion. You knew me before all this. Please remember that version of me. B. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I hit reply. Brenda. I do remember her. But she didn't remember me. I hope you find peace. Nick. I never heard back. That Friday, I was staining the porch when June showed up, holding a paintbrush in one hand and a thermos in the other. You look like you needed reinforcements, she said. I thought you were managing rentals today. She shrugged. I canceled. Why? Because I wanted to spend the afternoon helping a guy who's learning how to build again. I handed her a spare brush. We worked in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't feel like a void, just a shared space. Later, she said, you're calmer than when I met you. I'm not rebuilding the house, I said. I'm rebuilding the man who used to live in it. June nodded, eyes warm. Well, she said, I think he's coming along just fine. You ever watch an old tree sway during a storm? The trunk barely moves, but you know that wind's trying like hell to break it. Branches whip around, bark peels, maybe a limb or two cracks off. But the roots? They stay. I thought about that a lot lately. About staying. About what holds. About what finally lets go. Brenda hadn't contacted me again after that email. June said that was probably a good thing. And she was right. But silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's just a pause between storms. 3 months after the birthday dinner, after Frank gave me the deed, after Brenda vanished from the Pilates studio and her parents' lives, I got a call from Frank's attorney. Frank had passed. Heart failure, they said. Peaceful. In his chair watching baseball reruns with a glass of scotch nearby. The man never missed a Braves game. Or a chance to tell you what they were doing wrong. I stood in my kitchen, phone to my ear, staring out at the mangroves. I hadn't seen Frank since that night on the dock. Hadn't spoken since the envelope with the deed. Part of me figured I'd get another chat like that someday. But someday's a tricky thing to rely on. His funeral was small. Diane kept it quiet. I think she was still licking old wounds. Not from Frank, but from Brenda. June came with me. She didn't wear black. She wore slate blue. She said black makes it about the grief. Blue makes it about the sky, about letting go. I like that. We stood at the back of the chapel while the organ droned. Frank didn't believe in drawn-out eulogies. He said if people didn't know who you were while you were living, it's too late to explain once you're dead. Diane gave a short reading. His nephew told a fishing story. Then the pastor asked if anyone else wanted to speak. No one stood. Then, just as the pastor was stepping forward again, I heard the soft click of heels. Brenda. She walked slowly down the side aisle in a long black dress. No makeup. Hair pulled back tight. She looked older, not by time, but by weight. The weight of shame. Of regret. Of realizing too late that people move on without you. She didn't go up to the podium. She just stood near the front pew, faced the casket, and said 2 words. I'm sorry. Then she turned around and walked out. Didn't look at me. Didn't say another word. Back at the guest house, I made 2 cups of coffee. June sat on the porch with hers. I stood inside with mine, watching the clouds move in. She meant it, I said. June didn't ask who. She just nodded. Doesn't change anything, I added. No, she said. But sometimes saying sorry is the first thing you do for yourself, not the other person. I sat beside her, my hand resting close to hers on the armrest. The air smelled like rain. Weeks passed. Fall came and went, which in Florida means the humidity drops 5% and people wear flannel ironically. June helped me paint the second bedroom in the guest house. I helped her rebuild a porch swing that had been broken since before the pandemic. We didn't label anything we were doing. We just kept showing up. Sometimes that's enough. Around mid-November, a letter came. No return address. Just my name in careful script. I knew that handwriting. I opened it slowly, already bracing for what I might read. Nick, this is the last time you'll hear from me. I'm not writing to ask for anything. Not forgiveness, not understanding, not even closure. I just wanted to say thank you. Not for what you did, exposing me, documenting the truth, but for how you did it. You never screamed. You never humiliated me in public. You never let hate win. That has stuck with me more than anything. I'm leaving Florida. I've taken a job in Colorado. New town. New life. No one knows me there. And that's the point. I hope one day you let someone love you in a way I never could. I hope your memory stays sharp and your heart stays soft. I'm sorry I didn't protect either. Take care. Brenda. I folded the letter. Didn't cry. Didn't smile. Just breathed. June found me on the porch a few minutes later. You okay? Yeah, I said. She's moving. She didn't ask where. We sat there a while, the light fading behind the trees. Finally, June said, You ever feel like you could have done more? Been different? I thought about it. No, I said. I did the best I could with the information I had. She looked at me. You always this clear about things? Only after they nearly broke me. The holidays rolled in like fog. Slow, quiet, a little unexpected. June brought over a box of mismatched ornaments. I don't do trees, she said, but I like seeing them. So we made one. Not tall, not perfect. Just a little pine in the corner with old bulbs and a string of lights from a dollar store that blinked at the wrong rhythm. We laughed at that. A lot, actually. And one night, just after midnight, I kissed her. Not out of passion, but out of something warmer. Quieter. Something earned. She didn't pull away. Sometimes, I still walk past that red folder. Nick's Memory Therapy. It sits in a drawer now, underneath old golf scorecards and warranty receipts. I don't need to read it anymore. But I won't throw it out. It's not about holding on to pain. It's about remembering what it taught me. That truth doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes, it shows up in the form of a hotel keycard at the bottom of a golf bag. Sometimes, it takes 56 pages of manipulation to make you realize your memory was never broken. Your trust was. Sometimes, it just looks like a woman showing up with a paintbrush and a cup of coffee, saying, You missed a spot. I'm not sure where life's heading. But I know this. I'm not the man who let things slide anymore. I'm not the man who second-guesses himself because someone else says so. I'm not the man who forgets what matters. I am the man who got his life back. The man who stayed rooted. The man who remembered himself. Subscribe to the channel